Thanks for watching part one of this special program, AI, Human-Centric Design and Government Tech Adoption, brought to you by ServiceNow. We recorded it live at their federal forum in Washington, D.C. I'm your host, Francis Rose, with the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network. We have a lot of ground to cover, including best practices for integrating artificial intelligence into a change management strategy, where the commercial user experience can be put to use in government, and what the future of government service delivery looks like. I'll be joined by guests from the General Services Administration, State Department, and ServiceNow. It's a great topic and a great lineup, so let's get started. I want to welcome my guest, Bob Osborne, the Chief Technology Officer for Global Government at ServiceNow and former CIO at the National Nuclear Security Administration. Beth Killeran is the Deputy CIO at the General Services Administration, and Stuart McGuigan is the CIO at the State Department. Thanks all very much for coming. It's great to see all of you again. Stuart, I want to start with you because you're in an interesting spot regarding integrating new technology into a legacy environment, because you're doing it a million different places around the world. How do you prioritize? How do you set priorities for how you're going to do that and where you're going to do it?
You know, that's a great question, and one of the things that makes my job fascinating is the sheer variety of missions that we serve. If the federal government is doing something overseas, then the State Department's involved in doing it. And so what we've done is we've really worked closely with each and every one of our 276 posts to understand exactly what they need and when they need it. And so instead of what you might expect, which is the brilliant people at headquarters in Washington, and I think there are brilliant people at headquarters of every organization, deciding what people in the field need and pushing it out, we're actually employing a pull strategy. So we're presenting our capabilities more as a catalog, and then working with each IT lead, each ambassador, each management officer at each post across the world, and say, what do you need next? What do you need next? What do you need next? And that way we can make sure that we're pulling forward value as fast as possible, but that everything we're doing is perfectly aligned with mission. It's not our brilliant idea. It really is a collaboration between the Post and Washington.
A couple of things there I want to come back to if we have time. Beth, tell me about this intersection of modernization, new technology adoption, and mission delivery that you're undertaking with Dave Shive at GSA.
So GSA obviously has looked at putting the mission first, right? How do you make sure that they are leading the change? If we are trying to force the change on them, there's no way that it's going to be adopted. So similar to what Stuart just said, we're trying to do more of a push-pull, having them come to us with either what their business needs are, where they want to try to find efficiencies, and partnering with them on where technology can help them achieve those ideas and those objectives that they're having. And then we don't ever try to go big bang. We always try to pilot things first so they can understand the business value for that technology, and then scale and grow it as their appetite for that change is there. We don't ever try to go to a velocity where they cannot consume it.
Mm-hmm. That push-pull, as Stuart was talking about it, I'm looking at you and thinking that's exactly what you initiated as the CIO at HHS too, correct?
That is correct.
What did you learn from that that applies to what you're doing at GSA?
So first of all, it's a huge scale at HHS, and from a distributed perspective, every single organization there, in many cases, is actually bigger than other federal agencies. But each of them have such a specific mission, and I think right now people are starting to understand, as they have in other pandemics or potential pandemics, really understand what HHS does. So you've got CDC on one side that's helping to plan for things, you've got NIH on another that is actually trying to help build a particular vaccine. The same thing happened for Ebola, and so what you try to do in those big corporate agencies is either find areas where they have a particular challenge like they have right now, and tell them how technology can help them to accelerate, because they need to move very quickly. And then when things go back to normal, you find one different thing where you have a coalition of the willing, or an area where the technology is going to help across the board and you can get that buy-in from them. Trying to shove things from a headquarters perspective never seems to work, and it may work from a personality perspective for a certain amount of time when the leadership is there, but once the leadership changes, the adoption rate tends to go away, and then you have legacy technology that you cannot manage. So you have to find where those things are that everybody's going to agree to, that they want to have as part of their business.
Bob, the connective tissue in all of the efforts that Stuart and Beth and other change agents in government are undertaking is change management. How do you move from this point to this point? What are the people who are successful like them doing, in your view, to make that work, to make that change management work? That's not just, it's probably not a technology issue at all. I was going to say just a tech issue, but it's not that, is it?
Actually, not at all. So it's really refreshing and exciting for me to hear two technology leaders talking about business and mission outcomes, because it really is about what is the need of the customer, both internally, the employees within the different government agencies, and then the citizens that those agencies are supporting. Delivering services that are adopted holistically across the board is one of the greatest challenges, and we look toward the commercial model on how we have a user experience in our personal lives, how we can bring that type of a satisfaction with new technologies into government so that that adoption rate far exceeds the expectations of, just as Beth said, having a personality-based adoption or somebody who's really driving it home, to being a capability that enhances people's ability to do their job, for citizens to easily get to the services that they're looking for from government and then consume those. So it's a really exciting time to be here. I think we're seeing a demonstration of leadership here in that business focus or that mission focused outcome.
So Beth and Stuart, Bob used a term that's fascinating to me to watch from the outside for what folks like you are doing. And that's the focus on internal customers, especially as you're talking, Stuart, about trying to find out what your people in the field need rather than saying, here's what you need. I imagine, especially given your private sector experience, you think about those people as the CIO office's customers. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that is fair to say. And it's not the customer is always right and you give whatever they ask. And even in a commercial enterprise, it's not always a good idea to give your customer what they want if it's not what they need. And so part of the job is having a conversation that has nothing to do with technology in the beginning, talking about what are they trying to accomplish, what is their country's strategy, what programs are they employing to achieve their country's strategy, and what metrics are they using to see whether they're successful. And that forms a foundation to look at how can technology accelerate, amplify, or better measure their efforts. And the conversation is really about mission enablement, outcomes enablement. It's not about selling cloud or bandwidth or mobility.
A lot of discussion around the idea of user-centric design in and outside government, and I wonder, and anybody can take this, I'll pick on Beth probably, just because I know this is an area in which you have a lot of expertise, but I would like to tie together that idea of user-centric design and the internal customer, so how you think about what someone within your organization is going to do and not think so much about somebody on the outside.
So I think one of the things that attracted me to coming to GSA is that they really think about the customer and not just customer satisfaction, which is a point in time kind of conversation. I might think you're great today, but tomorrow I had a bad experience and I no longer appreciate your services. And this organization was one of the first to have an Office of Customer Experience. And so from an IT perspective, we're really embracing what that means and a 360 look of what a customer experience means. But you have to start with who your customer happens to be. And I think in most of our cases, our customers are multifaceted. So we will have internal customers within our organization. GSA also has customers that are federal-wide, and then we have vendors and we have citizens, so we have a multifaceted ecosystem that we have to think about from that customer experience, and we shouldn't be building technology that's only going to be satisfactory or enhance the experience for one of those populations. And so we've really started thinking about how do we build design that's around personas and understanding what the personas in our customers are and making sure that that end-to-end experience that they're going to have is as seamless and integrated and the same look and feel for them as possible so that they don't have to figure out from this system, here's my name and password and I got to do it, this thing means X, and I go into the next system, I use this name and password and that thing means Y. Right, and it's completely different, and they have to then figure out how to navigate the capabilities that we have as an agency. We should talk to them, understand how they're using the systems, and then modify our systems so that it's seamless and easy for them, just as they would do in their own lives. And so that's one of the things that we always think about is How are the people using technology at home? How do they want to use technology? Understanding not only that persona, but also the demographics of our populations, different parts of the country, different kinds of folks are going to want to use things differently. So how do we give a range of capabilities that allow us to do that without increasing the overall cost or management of the capability we're providing?
Where do you integrate those kinds of concepts, Stuart, into your development process at the State Department?
So I'd say one of the challenges is bringing in human-centered design early in the process. You almost want to start thinking about the journey of the user, of the employee, before you start thinking about technology. What are they trying to do? And I think one of the traps we can fall in, even with human-centered design principles, is we work on optimizing one step in the process, one set of interfaces, when really it's a connected set of processes. And so understanding the journey up front so that we might even change our minds about where we're going to apply technology, I think is critical. At the Department of State, we're very fortunate that we have a number of groups that have already started down the road of staffing up human-centered designers, design thinking. Our global public affairs is one where you might expect us to be thinking that way. So we actually have the resources to do it. For us, it's organizing it enough, soon enough, going upstream far enough that we can have an impact on the project end to end.
GSA was the first agency that I ever heard talk about these concepts, personas and customer journeys, Bob, and I have to admit, when I first started hearing about them probably 6, 8, maybe even 10 years ago, I thought, well, this sounds kind of cheesy. And yet, as time has gone on and I have come to understand these principles more, totally logical, and it makes sense that one understands what one expects the other person or other organization to do in order to be able to provide that service in the best way.
Well, really it is, and I love what Beth just brought out is this persona-based design principle. So we talk about human-centric design or citizen-centric design as an outcome, but if we go back and look at all technology exists to increase humans' ability to achieve outcomes. From the time when the wheel was invented through the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, now the information age, being able to enhance human performance is really what this is all about. So while we talk about people, process, technology, and data, really it's all about the people and that experience, being able to enhance human performance so that they can achieve greatness both at work as an employee, delivering a service that's really a great user experience by abstracting the complexity that makes all of that happen, getting the IT technology framework all done behind the scenes so that what the user experiences is a simple, pleasing experience. And that really changes that whole dynamic.
You have the advantage of having visibility into the DoD side as well as the civilian side of all these kinds of issues, Bob. What typically are the kinds of procedural policy acquisition hurdles that folks like Beth and Stuart run into when they're trying to execute this vision that you just described?
Well, I think that there's really two main pillars that have to be addressed early on. And they're not barriers, they're just things that have to be addressed because the reasons for the requirements, the regulations, the policies are grounded in actual risk, right? So that is about, of course, security, but also acquisition law. So being able to acquire technologies that are rapidly evolving and deliver those very quickly to have the agility to meet what the user requirements are, and they're ever evolving because they're really being framed and influenced by our personal lives. Being able to deliver those capabilities rapidly require a real different approach to acquiring technology, delivering it, and making sure that that information, that data is secure throughout that entire process.
More with GSA, the State Department, and ServiceNow next. You're watching AI, Human-Centric Design, and Government Tech Adoption on the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network. Stay with us.
AI, Human-Centric Design, and Government Tech Adoption is brought to you by ServiceNow, making the world of work better for people. Welcome back. Artificial intelligence has a lot in common with mathematics.
It can be applied to a variety of fields in government, like data analytics procurement, training, and more. But technical challenges arise in all of those applications. Let's dig into some of those issues now. Stuart, I imagine that speed was an issue that you learned right away was going to be different than your experience in the private sector.
Yeah, not in a way that I expected.
Yeah. Oh, really? How so?
If we're lined up to do something, we can move as fast as any company that I've ever been part of. When I first arrived, I met with the head of global public affairs, and she had an idea that was a gleam in her eye about developing an application to deliver talking points to leadership across the globe. And a pretty simple application, but given our processes, we weren't sure how long it's going to take to deliver. But because we lined things up in the right way, set ourselves up for the proper A&A processes, we actually delivered the first iteration in 5 weeks, which I think is about as fast as anybody goes from zero to having an actual application. The thing that is a challenge long term, and we're kind of working around it in small ways, but if we're going to go big with Agile and iterative, it really is going to turn procurement upside down. I mean, sitting down with a procurement officer and saying, I don't know what we're going to build. I don't know how many features it's going to have. I don't know how long it's going to take. I just want to stand up an Agile team, and here's my outcome metric, and can we please turn them loose? Knowing that that will be by far faster, better, lower cost than any alternative, but it feels like it doesn't have the controls that you'd want. If you step back a second, you think, I can give you perfect cost predictability. And a 2-pizza team, 8 people for a year, I know exactly what that costs. Here's my outcome measure, and I know exactly whether I've created value or not. So the accountability is there, the cost predictability is there, but measuring cost per widget, labor hours, all those things go out the window, and that's going to be a very big cultural change for us to pivot to that kind of environment.
All right, I noted the qualifier that you put at the beginning of that, if we're lined up to do something. How have you found so far that it works most effectively to line something up to be able to move forward on that kind of timeline?
So part of the art, I think, is spending time, as I said earlier, understanding what people are already trying to do. And there's a good chance, if the project's big enough and ambitious enough, they've already hit reality and some of the obstacles, and there's a little bit of frustration. And so where there's passion, there's existing interest, and there's frustration, there's opportunity to come in and say, would you be open to consider a different way of doing this? And if you can get those things together, and it fits under a contract vehicle, and it fits within the terms of the contract, you can move as fast as any organization. And an organization like the Department of State, we're used to responding quickly to crises. So the idea that something happens, we put together a cross-functional team, a task force, we deliver a product and we move on, that's in the culture. Having us understand that we can do IT that way as well, that's, I think, the learning.
Beth, the next step then in the discussion that we're having today involves adding things to this mix. Artificial intelligence, there are other breakthrough technologies that are not just over the horizon anymore, they're here. What does that look like in the context of what you're trying to do at GSA, but more broadly, what you know everybody's trying to do all across the federal government?
So a couple things. So one is, just as we just talked about with everything, you've got to understand where the business need is and what potentially, how that leadership change or that change management is going to be taken from an AI or a machine learning perspective. The ability to make some of those changes, so we have 6 pilots in artificial intelligence and machine learning now. A couple of them are getting ready to actually go to production. But you have to get part of the fear factor of the robots are coming from our jobs is part of that change management piece you have to do, and realize that what we're doing is helping you to allow one of your key resources, which is the personnel that work for your agency, to move to some of those higher value capabilities to be able to think a little bit more strategically, and that this is going to take care of some of those mundane tasks, at least from a start perspective. And then, as we're learning and growing, finding some maybe more complex capabilities that we can use this technology for. I mean, as anything that we're doing, it has to be done through a kind of a crawl, walk, run capability. If you try to just run, unless there is an actual emergency, there's no way that it's going to be adopted. So if we think about it as an integrated team, think of the capability, if we were doing something that's an emergency, having that ecosystem always with us that allows us for change at a more rapid pace, we can go right to run. Other than that, we need to make sure we're looking at what the business needs are, where we can actually logically insert artificial intelligence, machine learning, understand the other things that have to be in place. Do you need to have some cloud capabilities? Do you need to make sure that your network is there? Because if you just put in a new thing and the ecosystem that it needs to survive in isn't there, it's going to be a bad customer experience. And so you could have done great human design, but the experience isn't there. And so you have to take in all of those factors as you move logically forward into that next foray of artificial intelligence.
The main theme that I hear that I think is really, really cool, Bob, and it's not just on this stage, it's as I talk to practitioners all across government, is I hear the words mission delivery and business case and so on more than in the last year than I heard in the previous 13 of covering this space. What's driving that, and what's the advantage that people and organizations are going to gain because of that?
I think it's a realization that really the mission focus and the outcomes that we're trying to drive are critical to define in order to create a roadmap from where we are in our technology journey in an organization to achieving, delivering that outcome. But even more so than that, what gets me excited, Francis, is I hear from leaders describing a future state and what they're driving toward with technology. You've heard me use the phrase of anticipatory government before. Ultimately, as we start to apply AI appropriately across different service delivery workflows within the different government agencies, we can get to the point where we can actually prompt our citizens that there are services available for them based upon where they are in the moments that matter within their lives and what services they can receive from government agencies to help them along that journey in their own life. And when we start to meld that together, this vision state of that type of a service delivery model towards a roadmap of logically applying technology that will get us to that end state, we've got a real secret sauce for success.
Mm-hmm. So to that point about what kind of the future looks like, give me a sense, Beth and Stuart, and be as specific or as general as you want, about what service provision or service delivery looks like, not from an IT perspective, but from a mission delivery perspective, 2 years from now, 5 years from now in your organizations. What can somebody do, what will somebody be able to do that she can't do today? Or, and again, as specific or as general as you want. Stuart?
Diplomacy at a fundamental level is going to remain the same. Building relationships, having deep expertise. What I think is changing rapidly is the speed at which we conduct diplomacy and the impact of what we do. So predictive analytics, a lot of machine learning is being invested in things like autonomous automobiles, and I'm going to put that aside. I think
we're going to do autonomous vehicles?
Yeah. And so where I think it's going to add a lot of value for us is augmenting human experience. So imagine the scenario where instead of waiting for a crisis to happen, we have predictive analytics that suggest that a crisis is more likely to happen. A head of government is likely to leave the country. We don't know for sure, but it's become likely enough that we can configure a team. We use collaborative technology, so we're now all in the cloud. And the ability to pull people into a team to create an analytical product across time zones, across geography, now is very great. We can get the very best people at the State Department, regardless of what job they're in now, and then using the tools to disseminate information internally and social media, which I think we've gotten very adept at doing, the impact can be greater. So it's the same process, recognizing an opportunity, convening experts, making a decision and driving an outcome, but it's just going to happen faster and faster and faster.
Beth, tell me what that future looks like at GSA with your vision.
Yeah, so for us, we really want to make sure that, we have a thoughtful roadmap that not only looks at, the customer experience, but what we actually need to do from a technology modernization perspective. So I think we talked a little bit about human design. We've talked about artificial intelligence, but there's a whole data aspect of this and making sure that we're gathering that data once and being able to share it multiple times, so we're not asking our employees, our constituents, or even our citizens to do that multiple times. We are also trying to be thoughtful about how we incorporate other parts of technology. We have one of the largest the real estate in not only the federal government, but worldwide. And so how do we bring in things like the Internet of Things to have smart buildings, to have smart fleet, to be able to be proactive and using that data thoughtfully to enhance the human experience and enhance where we look for technology to augment the capability, because we know from a people perspective, we want to make sure that we are not only the place to work as having happy employees, we'll make sure that we have happy customers, but be able to continue to accelerate the rapid growth that our agency has had, and we expect that our customer base is going to continue on the very large trajectory that it's had increased, and we have to have the right technology to keep up with that velocity of growth.
Bob, we have a little bit more than a minute left. Both of your fellow panelists used the word augment in some form. Tell me the significance of that and how that fits into what this future vision looks like.
Well, it really is key, because augmenting human decision making results in better individual performance in agencies, better team performance of these individuals who have an increased augmented capability to deliver their outcomes, and then agency performance that even increases. But Francis, even more important than that, what both Beth and Stuart have described is the data element. The agencies all have tremendous amounts of data on each of us. We heard the CIO of HHS this morning say over 70 million people's health data is in HHS. Think about if that data was accessible from each of the agencies, normalized so that artificial intelligence could take advantage of that in order to deliver the types of outcomes and speed that rate of change across the government.
One final thought, the access to that data is contingent on what, as far as the people inside the organization being able to see it? Zero trust is a term we hear a lot about security-wise.
Yeah, zero trust is definitely a part of that. Understanding who has access to the data when, what their roles and permissions are. All those things can be architected today, but we need the holistic vision that ties that together so that it creates a framework for success in the future.
Bob Osborne, Beth Killer, and Stuart McGuigan, thanks all very much for joining me. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching part one of this special program, AI, Human-Centric Design and Government Tech Adoption. We recorded it live at ServiceNow's Federal Forum in Washington, D.C. For more, go to govmatters.tv/ServiceNow. For the Government Matters Thought Leadership Network, I'm Francis Rose.
From Washington, D.C. and around the world, this is Government Matters. With Francis Rose. Covering the business of government 6 days a week. Weeknights at 8 and 11 p.m. on WJLA 24/7 News. Sundays at 10:30 a.m. on ABC7 and worldwide on the American Forces Network. Tech. Security. Defense. Workforce. Acquisition. Issues that matter. The business of government. Government Matters.